எதன் கண்ணே நிலையாகி இருந்திடும் உலகம் எல்லாம் எதனெல்லாம் எதனென்றும் அனைத்துலகும் எழுமோ பற்றிமையாகும் எதன் பொருட்டாம் எதனாலும் வையமெல்லாம் எழுந்திடும் எல்லாமும் எதுவேயாகும் அதுதானே உளப்பொருளாம் சத்தியமாம் அச்சொருபம் அகத்தில் வைப்பான். With Bhagavan's immense grace, we are embarking on Bhagavan's teachings of Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham. Actually, in one sense, was written or created by Bhagavan from the accounts of Maharshi and Nandakumar, even before the verses of Ulladu Narpadu. It's an interesting account of which Kameshwarji makes this presentation in his book on the translation of Satsanghs. The account goes somewhat like this: that before 1922, that is the formation of the current Ramanashram around the Mahasamari of Amma Madhurabhuteshwara. Before that, Bhagavan has created many verses at the request of devotees, where they would bring a scriptural work of which they have a doubt and which they would like to have cleared by Bhagavan, and they would like to have something with them on which they can meditate continuously or for some time. And Bhagavan says that there are innumerable verses like this, and most of them have been lost to the written posterity. But once the great ones utter, they are never lost. They are always present to guide us all if we meditate deep enough. Those words of Bhagavan will always be available, but they are not available in the printed form. So it is Muruganar Swamigal once again who is to be thanked, and our gratitude should go towards him for having taken interest in collecting all the verses composed by Bhagavan. These verses he gathered were about 21 in number, and he goes to Bhagavan with a request that Neyiniyalbu Adainevu Tiranamema Uyumpadi Murugan Vodgana Uyulagin Kandamurumatra Ganaramanan Katturaitan Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham. What was described in that verse, that Muruganar Swamigal goes to Bhagavan with this request that those who are sincere seekers, who want to get rid of or be free from the throes of samsara, Poyyulagin, for them, please compose verses in addition to these 21 or in correction of this 21, so that we can have a work like the olden days, the Tamil Ilakyam, where they used to have these 40 verses as a work. So let us have it as Ulladu Narpadu, was the idea of Muruganar Swamigal. And in a period of 20 days or 25 days, what happens is very interesting, is that more or less all the old verses, which were actually translations from various scriptures are composed with reference to questions from scriptures. They were almost all of them were kept aside for want of continuity or for want of relevance in the topic. And almost all the 40 verses were composed anew by Bhagavan. All the verses of Ulladu Narpadu almost is what the word they use. And Ganapati Muni comes in there quite appropriately. And he is given the work to read. And he suggests that no upasana of the Saguna Brahman is found. So one of the verses inside the work, he shifts as the second Mangala Shloka, where the Ishvara's name, Mrityunjayam, Mrityubhyashritanam, is included. So at his request, that verse is shifted to the position as second Mangala Shloka, and Bhagavan adds one more to complete the 40. So almost all the 21 gathered by Muruganas Swami as a precursor to the creation of Ulladu Narpadu were moved to a position of Anubandham, addendum, as addition to the Ulladu Narpadu verses. And in 3 successive stages in different times of publication, Bhagavan adds that so that by 1948 or so, we have the Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham also having 40 verses and 1 Mangala Shloka. So, why at all we should study the Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham arises in our mind. One thing from my personal understanding is that Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham, it is a connection to the scriptures, the scriptural authority for the teachings, that who am I is not something that has been part of New Advaita or something that is newly created. It is something very old, very traditional, but taught to very serious devotees or serious seekers, so to say, or that is the purport of the teachings we find in Yoga Vasishtam also. That is, whom to teach, who is eligible for this kind of knowledge, what kind of dispassion they should have when we look at Yoga Vasishtam. So it was restricted in one sense to those who were mature seekers. And as Bhagavan says that this avataram is taking birth, the purpose is to spread Tanmaya Nishray, is to spread that the self alone is among all. And that is to our greatest blessing, that we have received the Ulladu Narpadu and the Kuvamaya teaching from Bhagavan. That is called as Swarupa Lakshana. The whole work of Ulladu Narpadu almost entirely teaches us Swarupa Lakshana. Swarupa Lakshana, and the other is Tatashta or Tatashta Lakshana, they say in Sanskrit. So it is new to me. These terminologies are new to me. But in going through the Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham, it is that we pick up these things because we are in touch with the old scriptures. And those terminologies come into our learning. So that while sharing also, we have those in us. The Tatashta Lakshanam, as they say, is that suppose the river is flowing, when we talk about the water, that the water is of this nature, then it is called as Swarupa Lakshanam. And when we talk as that which is flowing between banks or between the trees lying on either sides, these are indicative or incidental factors when we mention and point to the real teaching that we want to show, that is, they call it as Tatashta Lakshanam, that is indirect or incidental information. Right from first Mangala Shlokam of Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham, we will find the usage of lot of incidental information. Now the difference between Ulladu Narpadu and Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham is that, so to say, the works that have been used in Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham, in fact, have a lot of Swarupa Lakshanam, Swarupa Darshanam in them. But compared to Ulladu Narpadu, it is to say that the Swarupam or the Swarupa Lakshanam has been the heart of the teachings in Ulladu Narpadu. Again and again, Bhagavan would point us to the Ullapurul in almost all the verses. In almost all the verses, Bhagavan would take us to the source. But in these verses, we will find that the approach is a little bit more relaxed. That we are given a bit more clues, bit more additional terminologies, bit more support in terms of our sadhana. The references to the world, the references to the objects we will find are a bit more in Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham itself. That is because the scriptures from which these translations come and have been used have liberally used that portion. In fact, one of the scriptures that Bhagavan translates from, that is Yoga Vasishtam, has so many stories in it. Those are all the indirect indication. But the Yoga Vasishta Sara, if we take, the Yoga Vasishta Sara, the teachings culled out of Yoga Vasishtam, all the Drishti, Srishti Vada that Bhagavan puts before us, that the whole world arises, the moment the consciousness arises from the source, we will find that the Yoga Vasishta Sara is full of that, is full of Swarupa Lakshana. But Yoga Vasishtam itself, of which the Sara is contained, has lot of Tatashta Lakshanam, that is, lot of stories, lot of incidental information. Now, it is not to say one is good or one is bad, that we need both. We need both the information, and that is how the whole the Yoga Vasishtam starts. And today, being Ramanavami, as a pranams to the deity Rama, Sri Rama, it is our privilege that we come to Yoga Vasishtam. And the Yoga Vasishtam itself, it begins with Sri Rama as a student, not very different from Bhagavan, having completed all his studies by 15 years of age. He lives on a study tour. He lives on a pilgrimage, having completed his learning, and he sees the world, sees what is happening in the world, and he investigates, he does vichara as to the nature of the world, and we find that he comes up with tremendous dispassion. He comes up with the finding that whatever the man tries to hold slips away from him. And the words he uses in those dispassion are really tremendous. And that is what the sages who come to see him at the call of his father, they tell that this dispassion is not a temporary dispassion that comes out of some loss of a dear one or loss of some property. This is a deep dispassion which comes after investigation. And that is what we are also supposed to have while investigating the scriptural works like Ulladu Narpadu and Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham. The Anubandham introduces to us this information, that what is the typical sadhaka of old, what were they expected to have, and who am I will naturally bring this dispassion in force. Bhagavan says in the talks that who am I does not need any other support. It does not need any other sadhana to go along with it. It can stand alone. Because what happens is when you go towards the I, the temporary nature of all the non-I becomes clearly evident. And the Raja Vairagya that Rama gets comes automatically in the wake of Atmachara. The Vairagya, without something that comes out of hurt, comes automatically in Atmachara. But the Yoga Vasishtha book, coming back again, starts with what should be the nature of the seeker and how seeking starts, and going with the trend of Yoga Vasishtha. Today we can see two stories from that work, where it is the work of Valmiki said to be, and because the sources are not very clear, and one of the authors, commentators says, I leave the arguments regarding source to those who are interested in it. I am only interested in the Sara. Very humorously he says like that. But there appears to be a whole set of people who go into seeing who has written Yoga Vasishtha. Then the story goes like this, that there is a young man called Karuna, and he suddenly develops dispassion just like Rama. He who was normally going about his daily duties, like Sandhya Vandhanam, like this and that, and all that were there those days, he was going through them, and suddenly one day his father finds that he is just sitting in the corner brooding. And he asks, father asks, what happened, son? Why are you sitting like this? This is how the Yoga Vasishtha starts. Then the son says, that is Karuna says, father and guru. So he already takes the father to be the guru. It is said that one should gradually work oneself through the karma yoga and come up in life. But it is also said in the scriptures that the jnana and the tyaga of karma is what leads to liberation. Now these two contradictory statements are there. The statement of duality is there in front of me. As our secretary Krishna Swami Mama had spoken in the speech that I had played of him, he spoke so beautifully about the duality of Bhagavan teaching. The ordainer controls the destiny of all beings by being within them according to their prarabdha. That which is not to happen will not happen. That teaching, and looking at the Ullapurul, these are two total contradictions, he says. This is a duality. These are two different teachings if you look at it, and that confusion comes to Karuna. Now, on the one hand, all importance is given to karma and working through karma and coming to silence, and the other is tyaga, the letting go and coming to jnana. And that confusion, he says, how am I to overcome? Are these two paths, are they both required or both not required? And the father says, yes, both are required. They are like two wings of a bird. But I can help you only to the extent by saying another story. So the father goes and narrates another story, that once there was this heavenly lady who is called Suruchi. She is sitting on the Himalayas and generally having a good time, I suppose. And she sees a Indraloka messenger going by in the skies. And as is usual, she wants to know why, what is he about. So she calls him and asks, what are you doing? And he narrates his job, what he is doing. And that is the indication to us about what we should do about these two things, karma and jnana. The Indra's messenger says, there is this king who is meditating on that hill there, and he has handed over his kingdom after ruling it for some time to his son, and he is undergoing severe austerities and tapas on that Gandhamandana hill. And now, suddenly, my boss Indra called me and said, you go and give him these gifts. He has sent a lot of gifts, which are all appealing to us. Lot of music, dance, all those things are sent with the messenger to the meditator, to the one who is doing austerity. And Indra says, invite him to Indraloka or heaven. Let him come as a gift for his tapas, the penance, the yoga he is trying to do. So the messenger promptly goes along with all the coterie of gifts, and he goes and meets that king. And he offers all these gifts to him and says, Indra has sent me as a result of your tapas. You can come and you have this invitation to heaven. And the king, he is quite wise. He does not leave his strand of inquiry and rush into the objective gifts given by the tapas. The tapas, apparently, if you want to make the connection, has brought these gifts, but he doesn't want to go with the gifts. He asks, he inquires, what is this heaven made of? What is this stuff? What happens in heaven? Can you tell me, O messenger of Indra? And the messenger of Indra says, why generally there are three types of people who come to heaven, who have done lot of merit, who have done middling merit, who have done a little kind of merit or punya. And usually what happens is, once their merit stuff gets over, they come back to the world and they have to start going about their duties again. So the king says, I am sorry, I am not interested in that gift. You can go and say to Indra that I am not interested in that gift. Now, having received that message, Indra tells to the same messenger, now that he has rejected this mansion of gifts, please go and tell him to reconsider my offer after visiting the ashrama of Valmiki. Let him consult Valmiki, and if he likes Valmiki, what Valmiki says, let him stay there or let him come back. This gift is open. So the king is now led. The messenger doesn't leave him. His duty is still not over. He takes him to the ashrama of Valmiki, and the same question that was put by Karuna to his father is put by the king to Valmiki. How am I to get over this misery and bondage in this world, and how am I to seek liberation? And that is where Valmiki says, we have asked the right question. Let me narrate to you the holy work, a discussion between Vasishta and Rama. I will narrate to you and you can listen. And just as Rama found total self-knowledge by the end of that dialogue, you too, may I bless you that you too get that. That is the blessing that Valmiki gives to that king. Obviously, the king says bye-bye to the Indraloka messenger, and the Indraloka messenger is flying by. That is when Suruchi sees him and asks these things. So that is one story. That is one story about preparedness. And the first dialogue between Vasishta and Rama begins that to be eligible for Yoga Vasishtam or Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham, one should be neither completely ignorant nor be a realized person. He should be middling. He should know that he is in bondage. The understanding should be that I am in bondage. I am still feeling restricted, constricted. I am in suffering and I want to liberate myself. One who is completely ignorant also is not eligible because he doesn't feel the fetters. One who is self-realized doesn't need the work. So that is how the work starts. And the first shloka, the Mangalam shloka, has been taken from Yoga Vasishtam, and there are many shlokas in the Upasana, the part of Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham, taken from Yoga Vasishtam. So that is why I started with some discussion about Yoga Vasishtam. There is another interesting story, and now that we have started storytelling, so we can go through with that. In Yoga Vasishtam, which gives us a clue how much Bhagavan has condensed all the Tatashta Lakshanas into the Swarupa Lakshana in the first 5-6 verses of Ulladu Narpadu. Manomayam Tadbhuvanam Vadamaka. That is Ulagain Pulangal Uruverandravai Ulanain Purikku Pulanan Ulagai Manam Undru Ain Purivaya Oorndidudala Manadai Andri Undo Ulagam Varai Nere. That means what we see as solid sensory world, what we see as this solid human beings and the objects is all mind only. But how much Yoga Vasishtam takes to tell us that, let us see through one more story, that one point, that it is all mind. It is not that the problem of the Western philosophers that the mind-body duality is always present and they are not able to answer which is true, which is false, and which consumes which. In Yoga Vasishtam and Bhagavan's teachings, there is no such confusion. What is seen as solid world, as solid sensory body, is only created by thought. Is all mind stuff. To tell this, how Yoga Vasishtam goes about it is narrate a story. The story of Shukra. I am not giving all the names, but it's an interesting story. Shukra is a young man helping out his father Bhrigu, and Bhrigu is meditating on the banks of a river, seriously meditating, and Shukra is just helping him out. That's all. With whatever is required. Now, what happens is the mind of Shukra, it doesn't remain still. So, one of the days that he is helping out his father, he sees a lovely celestial damsel on the sky, passing by the sky, and there is a liking from his side and liking from her side, and keeping the body here, with the mind, he moves with her. He moves with her into the Indraloka to which she belongs. He goes there, she goes away somewhere, and then he tries to understand what are all the workings of the Indraloka. He completely forgets the identity with the body he has left. The body is here in the river bank, and Bhrigu is meditating. And his mind has gone, taken that form and gone to the Indraloka. And Indra, seeing this man's nature, he says, why don't you stay here? And happily, the Bhrigu in that form, the Shukra in that form accepts that. And he keeps looking for the damsel whom he had espied in the skies and meets her in due course. And they get married and they spend, the Yoga Vasishtam says, 8 earth life cycles. 8 cycles of how much life earth would have, that much time they spend there in that loka. Then the work says Probably because their punya ended. Probably because their punya ended, both of them come down to earth. And how they come down also is described, that they come down as dew drops on the paddy that is there, and that paddy observes that dew drop, and it becomes this Shukra becomes a Brahmin boy in that particular birth. That lady becomes something else. They get married again. They get some child, and at the end of that birth, he starts desiring for a lot of comfort. why don't I have this and that and all? He is born as a king, and at the end of that tenure as king, he has had enough about wealth and other things, and he has a lot of desire for tapas and holiness, and he is born as a holy man and all that. And in the meanwhile, here he does tapas in the river bank as that holy man. Now, in the meanwhile, Bhrigu opens his eyes and sees, he looks at his son. His son's body obviously is degenerating because been infested with whatever eats these bodies, and he gets wild, he gets angry. Tapas is gone for a moment, and he curses time. He curses time for having taken away his son in an untimely manner. So that is when, just like the Yama appears before Nachiketas, the time or Yama appears before Bhrigu also, and they have a dialogue. They have a dialogue where Yama says, it is quite unfair on your part, O sage, to curse something that is natural. That this body, is made of those materials, and at the end of its time, it has to be handed over to me. But I am not responsible. It is not my will. It is nature. Now, for you to curse me is quite unfair. And do you know what happened? The one whom you call your son, where is he? What all has happened? No, what all has happened? He has died in front of me, Prabhu says. And you are totally responsible for this. No, says the time. You see, this is what has happened. And Prabhu is given the eyes to see what all has happened. And he adds a few more births. We were narrated a few births. And Yama narrates a few more births into that. He became angry, became a hunter, became a deer. Then he finally is in that Ataka, he is in that river bank where he is meditating now. So Bhrigu goes through, my son is not dead. The one whom I call as son has gone into that form, and he is now meditating. Whatever journeys, whatever ups and downs he has done, finally he has come to tapas, and he is meditating there, and he apologizes to time. I am sorry. This is what happens, isn't it? That the whole thing, whatever sensory bodies, whatever celestial bodies we create, is all created by thought, isn't it? Is all created by the mind. And of course, there the story ends, and Yama goes in his way, and Bhrigu goes in his way, but we are left with Bhagwan's next shloka, that Uladum Arivum Undrai Uditodungum Enum Uladu Arivu Tannal Mulilum Ulagarivu Tondri Marai Darkidanai Tondri Marayadulilum Pundramam Akde Purulu. What Bhagwan's shloka captures, the Swarupa it captures from just one shloka to next without this story, is that Bhagavan says that Ulagum Harivum Undrai Uditodungum, that is the mind which creates all these words. The sensory body, the divine body, the emotions, the happiness, the sorrow, the pleasures, the pains, all are created by the mind, are created by thought. But whatever world you live in, and the mind, they rise simultaneously and set simultaneously. Ulagum, whether it is this world, the sensory body in front of Bhrigu, sitting and decaying and dead already, but Bhrigu, the father, is alive and he is in sorrow, his son is dead. But as his son died, now Bhagavan says that world and that mind rise and set together. But that world arises and shines only with the help of the mind. Uladu Narpadu Anubandham. Though both are simultaneously rising and simultaneously setting, which is lit up by which? The world show is lit up by the mind show. Uladu Narpadu. Whatever, whether you are with the nymph in the Indraloka or whether you are a hunter chasing a prey, thinking that this is what is real for me, I have to get this afternoon's food, or you are that hunted deer itself. All the world experience arises only with the rise of the mind, and it is caused by the mind. Uladu arivu onrai udithodundu velum. Uladu arivu thannal olirum. The world, whichever world you will be seeing, is rising and shining and is being experienced only because of your mind having risen. Ulagarivu தோன்றிமறைதற்கிடமாய் தோன்றிமறையாதுளிரும் ஊன்றமாம் அத்தே பொருள். How does Bhagavan come to Swarupa Lakshana directly? He says that whichever world it may be, but it arises only after the rising of the mind. Now for the mental thoughts to rise and set, there must be a consciousness which does not rise, which does not set, which does not have birth, which does not have death. உலகறிவு தோன்றிமறைதற்கிடமாய் தோன்றிமறையாது ஒளிரும் ஊன்றமாம் அத்தே. Who are you? Who is the sadhaka? Who is the one who is seeking the truth? You are that Purna Vastu which does not rise, which does not set. You are not the thought form, you are not the body, whether celestial or human. You are not that, you are not blazing thought. You are the Purnamam of the Purul. This is where the connection. By studying Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham, we will be able to, without any doubt, connect our day-to-day life, what we think to be real and what we think experiences to be sought. Clearly, we will be stopped and we will be made to hold the self, hold Bhagavan in the Atma Swarupa, which is the reality. Therefore, the practice of Atmaja, with the help of Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham, which is going to give us these indications, additional points where the mind is brought back again to the self. Some more resting points with which we will be turned inward. Those will be provided to us by Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham. So the Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham is going to give us additional points of turning inward. This is going to give us the scriptural background, scriptural validation of the teachings we are following. In fact, it is said that it is the sage who validates the scriptures. Muruganatha used to say that the Vedas appear in front of the Jnani to get validated. So that is the position of Bhagavan. And from that position, he has directly given us the teachings in Ulladu Narpadu. Those are his direct words. But out of great compassion, he has also given us this incredible selection of verses, which are not only translations, but also his own verses are there. There are about 21 verses from Sanskrit works. There is one verse number 11 by Lakshman Sharma himself, and a collection of verses by Bhagavan, and some translations from other teachings. We see from Allama Prabhu also one verse is taken from Bhajagovindam, it is there. So this is how Bhagavan is going to surround us with this beautiful scriptural knowledge, which is all going to help us to turn inward and stay inward, to abide in the self. to see that the mind does not just fly away. For that, if we take the study of Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham, and not merely for knowledge to show, not merely for the verses to quote, but for actual turning inward, then I think we will have Bhagwan's total blessing in abiding in this earth. We will sit in Atma Ucharam for 15 minutes as it
Namo Ramana, prostrations to Ramana, and he is a self in all beings. And surely by the immense grace of that self manifest as Bhagavan Ramana, we have commenced the dhyana on the Ulladu Narpadu Anubandham on this very sacred day of Ramanavami. Because it is so clearly a manifestation of grace, because we did not choose the beginning of the day of the Ulladu Narpadu or the Saddarshana. And certainly we did not plan for the end date. And even when it did finish, and we thought of the Anubandham as starting, the fact that there was one intervening week where there would be another event, those were not thoughts for us. It is only suddenly when we were about to start this that it struck me, oh, Bhagavan is making us start on Ramanavami. And it struck me more because for the past 2 weeks, actually, Nandakumar ji has been dwelling on the Yoga Vashishta. And the Yoga Vashishta is the text of the Upadesha, the Atma Upadesha, to Sri Rama himself. So it is the self itself receiving the Upadesha, as it were, to indicate that every one of us who is actually a manifestation of the self has to receive the Upadesha as well in this apparent play of this, what seems to appear as this manifestation. And Rama and Ramana are very deeply connected, as we all know. They are both born in the star Punarvasu. And today, hearing Kameshwar's explanation or narration of the birth of Rama, he had dwelt upon one of the very chief important meanings of Punarvasu as that which renews, or that which gives new life to something which may have degenerated or may have lost its importance. Punarvasu is a renewal. And we can all see how Bhagavan is the renewal of that very tattva, the renewal of the essence of the Yoga Vashishta, the renewal, as Nandakumar ji told us today very sweetly, the renewal of all the scriptures. And renewal is a renewal. And at the same time, it cannot be seen as something apart from the existent or the traditional manifestation, because see, when a mango tree grows new leaves, they are new leaves and they are very beautiful because of their newness, but they are not neem leaves, they are mango leaves. So that tradition is renewed very beautifully in Bhagavan. And then I had a few thoughts. Of course, I also remembered that Bhagavan gave darshan to Sundaresh Iyer of Yoga Pattabhisheka Rama on his desiring that vision. And who else is Bhagavan but that? If he has to give that vision, then he has to be that. So he is all encompassing. He is the Rama who has now come to us in the form of the Anubandham. Now, why the Anubandham? Why study of Anubandham? This was one of the other questions which Nandakumar ji put to us today, and he pointed out it is to get the linkage with the roots, with the tradition. Another thought came to me that Bhagavan talks about the self as the inner guru, and outside in the world also he says the guru pushes one's mind within. So to me it looks like Ulladu Narpadu is the inner guru, it is the self itself. And the Anubandham is the outer guru, because in the course of sadhana, as Bhagavan says in Ramana Gita, that during the course of sadhana, abidance is not steady, the mind comes out, it comes out into the world. When it comes out into the world, what does it see? It sees that which is an appendix, that which is the appendage, that which is the manifestation, that which is the tatastha, that which is surrounding or not directly the experience, apparently. Ultimately, everything will become the direct experience. But what looks like a non-apparent, non-direct or indirect experience, and it is obviously significant for us to go through that. Otherwise, this work would not have come from Bhagavan. No word from Bhagavan is, not a single word can be extra or meaningless or worthless. And that he is allowing us to take this journey must be significant for each one of us also. Without that, whichever one of us is going through this journey, he won't be giving us this journey. If we look at our lives, we will see that when the mind comes out, it engages in various aspects of life and it could get caught there. And these beautiful stories of Yoga Vashishtam, and I'm sure the other verses of Anubandham also will be having that same impact. I'm not familiar with the Anubandham at all. So for me, it's a beautiful new journey. It's a universal journey. And what I found, like in this story which was given, for example, the absolute meaninglessness of time is brought up through stories. The absolute meaninglessness, because if Bhagavan says go to the source, there is no time. But if we look at something, our dear fellow traveler Venkatesh Deshpande much earlier used to say, see, that's all right, but if you come to the real world, he would say, no. Now that demarcation is lost for him, I'm sure. But he used to say, if you come to the real world. So what we are given is stories in the real world. In the so-called real world, there is this dead son, but the dead son is not just a dead son. He in time, the same time frame, he has gone through so many lives. He's gone through so many things which are all meaningful from his perspective. At the same time, it gives us one that all this is absolutely meaningless, because it's just a great play where different time zones are concurrent, different experience zones are concurrent, and they all have different meanings to the different individuals, and it's just a vast variety which, if we get caught in it, it's the end of us. All this comes home to us. This is the outer guru in a way. In another way, if we look at it, say that not from the sadhana perspective, I mean, not saying that we are still caught in the world, but say that, okay, Ulladu Narpadu is already given us clarity of experience. Then how do we look at the Anubandham? We look at the Anubandham through that clarity. The way Bhagavan says that you read a book after you abide in the self. Bhagavan's way is always like that. He says that's how he came to it. He says, I got the Atmanubhavam, and then I came to know about the scriptures. Then I came to know about so many things. I came to know even the word Brahman afterwards, he says. So from his life perspective, he says, first you get established in the truth. After that, when you look at the world, when you look at time, when you look at manifestation, you will not get carried away by it. And to see a few instances, case studies almost, he is giving us this Anubandham to say that it will not, you can understand. So only the self is the Adhara. You can take it back, as Nandakumar took us back to that verse. We can take it back to that particular verse in Ulladu Narpadu, which makes us understand the Adhara of this manifestation. At the same time, when we are in the manifestation, if we are still in the sadhana, it allows us to turn with it. If not, it allows us to have that clarity that all this is only that, all this is only that, all this is only that. So Bhagavan is blessing us with these beautiful verses beginning from today. And what else can we say? But Unake namaskar. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Namaru